Whipple Family Misadventures Book 11 Between the Light and the Darkness Chapter 5.
A Chaos Emerald.
Shadow said softly, even though he had no idea what that meant. He never heard those words before, and yet it still felt familiar, in a way that he couldn't explain. Suddenly Eclipse slammed the cover back down it. Shadow turned toward him sharply, glaring. It felt like he had been drinking from a cup, only to have it snatched from him before he was done.
Hey!
What?
I'm not done looking at it.
Now that he had seen it, the hedgehog wanted nothing more than to take it for himself and try to figure out what it meant, what power it contained. The Darkling didn't seem to be bothered by that.
You can see it later. But since we're talking about it, I want to know why you have never heard of your chaos powers. Because that human guy who created you definitely knew about them.
Shadow frowned, as that was new information to him.
I don't know.
Have you ever been able to do anything with your abilities?
The dark hedgehog huffed.
I can do something. Once I gathered energy toward me and then blasted it away. And I can teleport.
Eclipse nodded.
Chaos blast. And you didn't teleport, you warped, using chaos control. There's a difference.
There is?
Of course. Come on, we should probably leave before someone catches us in here.
The Darkling ushered him out, and they started walking down a corridor again.
Teleporting is just disappearing and reappearing somewhere else. Warping, or using chaos control or chaos snap, is bending space or time the way you want it. That's how I brought you here, by the way.
Shadow nodded slowly.
Chaos control is commonly used for long distance, and you actually have to say the command. Also, it always takes an emerald. Chaos snap doesn't take a verbal command, and you can do it without an emerald, but it's always shorter distances. Have you used chaos spear? It's like gathering a lightning bolt of chaos energy and then throwing it.
When Shadow didn't say anything, the Darkling kept talking.
Well, then I think we should practice. This is an excellent place to do it. We'll work on all skills.
Okay.
Eclipse clapped his clawed hands together.
Since you've done it before, start with chaos snap, short distance warping. We'll work on stopping time later.
There was something about that statement that made Shadow really want to ask about how it was possible to slow time down, but decided he could ask later. Closing his eyes, he took a deep breath, and then just teleported across the room. The simplicity of it surprised him so much he nearly fell over. Previously, he had to think about it and try, hoping that it would work. That time it had been barely a thought, and it happened. Not to mention it usually tired him out, but here he felt great. His brother appeared next to him.
Not bad.
It's never been that easy for me.
There's a lot of chaos energy here, makes it easier.
The darker hedgehog thought about that.
On Earth, whenever I did it, it was draining at the best of times, and at worse, exhausting.
His brother leaned toward him.
Probably because you were wasting energy in some way. Here, you can use the energy around you. But elsewhere, you have to rely on your own, and that power is not infinite.
Not all of that made sense, but Shadow nodded and continued to warp around the area until he felt far more comfortable doing it.
I tried once warping with someone else, but I couldn't bring them along with me.
It's a skill that you have to practice. After you practice some more, you should try it again. Although I wouldn't recommend trying to go very far the first time you do it with someone else, and then switch to chaos control for long distance, like how I got you here.
Reaching up, he rubbed the bottom of his muzzle as his tail beat a lazy rhythm behind him.
But we can't practice that since we're not allowed to use the emerald. You mentioned you did a chaos blast before?
I was deeply upset about something, and this dark red energy started to gather around me until I released it. But it wasn't as much of a blast as it was.
The Darkling raised a brow.
Barely anything.
Yeah.
Shadow muttered under his breath. For a skill that was literally called a blast, it sounded like it should have been more powerful, something that others would respect.
What? I didn't hear you.
Shadow raised his eyes toward him, especially the spikes on the back of Eclipse's head, the red markings that ran around his brother's eyes and streaked down toward his spikes.
Where are your ears?
Slowly, the Darkling brought one clawed hand up to touch the side of his head and frowned.
They're under there somewhere.
He waved his hand to indicate he was tired of that conversation.
Let's try chaos spear next. So what you're going to want to do is visualize energy forming into a bolt in your hand. You'll be able to feel it. They're very warm. And then once it's formed, you throw it.
Taking a deep breath and then exhaling, Shadow did as Eclipse said. For a long moment, nothing happened and he just felt stupid, until a burning heat started to develop in his palm. Without thinking about it, he opened his eyes and hurled it as hard as he could.
Okay.
Eclipse said as the tiny bolt all but bounced off the wall of the chamber.
Not bad, I guess. For the first time, try again.
He watched for the next several minutes as the hedgehog struggled with it but kept trying.
Why do you have those rings around your wrists?
Glancing down at them, Shadow wasn't sure. He couldn't remember when they were first around his wrists and ankles. They had always been there. So much so that taking them off felt weird and he preferred to wear them constantly.
I don't know.
Eclipse studied them for a long moment.
Want to take them off?
I don't know if I should.
The Darkling grinned and for the first time, Shadow noticed that his tongue was a dark green.
Why not? Who says you shouldn't?
He literally didn't have an answer to that. But he had already removed his gloves and socks. Taking these off felt weird, close to unnatural.
Just try it. What's the worst that can happen?
It took Shadow a moment, but he managed to figure out how to remove them. Without it, he felt completely naked, almost vulnerable. There had been times where he didn't have socks or gloves on, but the rings were a different story.
You want to try Chaos Spear again?
Nodding, Shadow called forth the energy, letting the heat brush against his bare fingers before he threw it. To his surprise, it came out a lot larger and far more powerful than it had been before. Startled, he stared at his hands. Next to him, Eclipse's yellow eyes were massive.
How did you do that?
I don't know.
Do it again.
Taking a moment to focus until he had the yellow energy within his hands, Shadow took aim at a pulsing mound on the side of the corridor and hurled it. A second later, sparks flew as it exploded and bits and pieces bounced off the walls. For once, Eclipse seemed almost speechless, clutching the gold rings in his claws.
Those bracelets were holding you back. Try Chaos Control now.
Shadow did so and was impressed with how easy and incredibly effortlessly it felt. No wonder Eclipse had been able to bring him here from Earth, if this was anything like the power that the Darkling had.
I would tell you to work on Chaos Blast next, but I think you should wait until we're off the comet. If you're going to deliver blasts that are anywhere as strong as those spears.
For a wild second, Shadow thought about just doing it anyway, and then realized it was probably best to listen to him. His feelings of accomplishments made him feel almost giddy, like he could do anything.
If we're not going to do that, how about you try and catch me?
He said and then warped away before his brother could answer. For almost 30 minutes, that's what the two of them did, chasing and hiding from each other, both using their chaos powers to try and stay ahead of the other. When Shadow became bored of the one being hunted, they switched it around and he went after Eclipse. Of course, the Darkling had an advantage, as he knew every inch of this place, but it was still fun. Everything felt perfect, and then it was like a switch was flipped. Abruptly, Shadow felt like he had been hit by a truck. He struggled to breathe, to stay on his feet as wave after wave of exhaustion washed over him. It felt like something was literally leeching the strength from his body. It didn't make sense. He had been fine moments ago and then suddenly he wasn't. After what seemed like forever, his brother was leaning over him.
Shadow, are you okay?
I don't know.
The dark hedgehog gasped out.
Your chaos energy is extremely low, but I can't take you back to the Emerald right now. Has this ever happened before?
Gritting his teeth as his vision swam before him, Shadow closed his eyes.
No, never.
There was a pause and then Eclipse darted away from him, coming back a moment later. Reaching for his wrists, the Darkling snapped the bracelets back around his wrists, and it was like a door had been closed. He was still panting and exhausted, but no longer felt like he was getting worse with every second.
Guess those bracelets did serve a purpose after all. Maybe we should just take it easy and go back to the hatchery to rest for a bit.
Shadow was about to ask if they had to go to bed by a certain time, then remembered he wasn't with Wade anymore. If their father was too busy to see them for days, then he had to be too busy to care about mundane stuff like that. He nodded and let Eclipse guide him back. Once there, the two of them each made a separate nest out of thick, warm hay and bunched it together until it was warm and comfortable. It wasn't as nice as his bed had been back on Earth, but it would have to do. Shadow was just curled up and was starting to drift off when he heard his brother's voice, soft as a whisper.
I'm so glad you're here. You did amazing today. You might have been different in some aspects, but you're going to be exactly what we need. Everything is going to get a lot better from here on out. I can't wait, it's going to be incredible.
The dark hedgehog thought about letting him know that he was still awake and had heard that but decided not to and just let himself drift off to sleep. Sometimes Shadow felt like while he was here he was being tested. That was okay, he had a few tests of his own. Like when he asked Eclipse for some time to himself to be left alone, as that was rather important to him. He needed to be able to decompress. To his complete and utter surprise, the Darkling just nodded and walked away without another word. It never had gone that easy back on Earth with Silver, as the gray hedgehog could be clingy and always wanting to always be around someone else, hating to be by himself. Sometimes Shadow just had to sneak off just to get away from him. He had been on the Black Comet for almost 2 days and still hadn't seen the mysterious father yet, and it felt weird calling him father when he hadn't even met him. Back with Wade, he and Silver had always called him Dad. The word was simple, full of tenderness and caring. Never father. In fact, Shadow didn't hear that word unless Wade was referring to Charlie. The word was full of poison, almost always said in anger about how the man was just a biological father and nothing more.
So, does your father not care about you, or what?
Shadow asked after he finished eating the meat he had been given for breakfast. He wasn't quite sure what it was but decided it was probably best not to ask. It was good if slightly salty. That sentence alone made Eclipse's white muzzle flush with anger.
No, of course not.
He doesn't care.
Of course, he does. He's just extremely busy and doesn't have much time for anything else. Didn't your former human father ever do that?
Shadow shook his head, making his quills fly back and forth.
No, he never stayed away from me, or my brother days at a time. He spent a lot of time with us.
The dark hedgehog couldn't imagine anyone doing that. When Eclipse narrowed his eyes, it looked like he was attempting to figure out if Shadow was lying or not.
He was never busy?
Sometimes, but not for days. He cared about us.
His mind briefly thought back to how he had felt the night after threatening and throwing the shoe at Wade, but he pushed it away. Just thinking about Wade and Silver made his chest ache. He hoped they were happy and were doing all right, especially after he left. At minimum, he hoped they weren't just sitting around thinking about him. The Darkling scoffed.
He's still just a pathetic human. Did he even have any kind of power at all?
No, humans don't have powers.
Shadow said, watching as a tentacle slowly move its way across the wall above them.
Then why did you stay? If I hadn't shown up to rescue you, would you have just been there forever? Why didn't you at least go be with other hedgehogs?
There were hedgehogs there, on Earth. I wasn't alone. And I stayed on that planet in the beginning because I didn't have any way to get off. But then I stayed with my dad because he was kind to me. And he took care of me when I needed it and helped me out.
Until he decided that you were too dangerous and that he liked your brother more. Because that's what humans do. Which, was he actually your brother?
Shadow blinked, trying to make those two pieces of information work together in his mind. On one hand, he remembered Wade constantly saying how much he loved and cared about the two of them, how they were a family and how that would never change. But then those feelings of pain and misery from a few days ago had also been very real and he had been quite miserable.
He was, but not biologically. And why do you keep insulting humans? Have you ever even met one?
The Darkling scoffed again.
I don't need to. I know how terrible they are. They're soft and squishy with no abilities to speak of. We're far better than them or everyone else. The black arms are superior to any other species in the galaxy. And that's not an opinion, it's an established fact.
Shadow stared at him.
Wait, what?
What part's confusing you?
An established fact?
Eclipse only shrugged.
Of course. How do you think we got here? Because it wasn't by asking nicely.
He did not seem too bothered by that statement.
Some species don't even deserve to exist at all. I'm not entirely sure how Father decides how to handle each one. I guess if they can prove useful to him, or at least supply us with things that we need. If not, then...
Shadow's eyes widened in horror when he realized what his new brother was talking about.
You've done that?
Not me personally, but I will, and you will too.
Shadow didn't respond. The Darkling's tail started to twitch back and forth.
Why do you think you were created, as the ultimate life form, as a weapon of destruction? Why do you think you have these powers that are made for attacking? Like Chaos Blast and Chaos Spear, those aren't just for fun, they're for a purpose. This purpose. This is what you were meant to do, and so am I. This is why the Black Arms exist.
There was no way Shadow could respond to that. Eclipse frowned but softened his tone.
And that's okay. It's not a bad thing. Everyone has a purpose, and this is ours.
When the dark hedgehog still didn't say anything, he continued on.
Don't worry about it. You'll be all right. Right?
I don't. I need a moment to think about this.
Okay, come back to the hatchery when you're done and we'll go practice some more later. Then we'll get something to eat.
The way he said this was so casual, so unconcerned. Nodding slowly, Shadow turned and wandered away, his thoughts racing. He didn't know what to do. For so long, he had been wondering about his existence, why he had been created, what being the ultimate life form actually meant and what he was supposed to do with it. But then it ended quickly and he had been left behind again, wondering what his purpose actually was. And now, his purpose apparently was still only to be a weapon. While he was glad he had come here, had found out about his heritage and his powers, he wasn't sure if going down this path was the right one. A very large soldier came around the corner and scowled at him. Before Shadow could even think of what he was supposed to do or not do in this situation, as he hadn't spent a lot of time away from Eclipse, the soldier lumbered on and left him alone. Gazing at a puddle of goo in the corner, Shadow was starting to wonder what he was supposed to do next. If that really was his purpose or not. If he could keep running from it or if he was truly destined to become a weapon. Suddenly a massive hand grabbed him around the torso and hoisted him into the air. Shocked, Shadow hadn't heard footsteps or any indicator that anyone was coming, and started to struggle, until he saw what was holding him. Whatever they were massive, only a floating torso, and had 3 eyes.
Eclipse, get over here now and explain this.